All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this village board meeting to order on Monday, November 20, 2023, and ask you if you would all please rise and join the village board in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee LaBedz?
Here.
Trustee Shirley?
Here.
Trustee Bertucci? Trustee Grasse?
Here.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Here.
Trustee Dunnington?
Here.
Trustee Baldino?
Here.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Here.
President Hayes?
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we have one set to approve tonight from our committee of the whole meeting on November 6, 2023. Are there any changes or passes? Passed by Trustee Tinaglia. Any other changes or passes?
But I'll move to approve the committee of the whole minutes for November 6, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Trustee Grasse, second by Trustee Baldino. Any further questions or comments from the board or from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the approval of the accounts payable, and can I call on Trustee Baldino?
I don't think your microphone's on. You don't have my loud voice.
That's for sure.
Okay, how about now? Okay. Can I call on Trustee Baldino?
You can. I move approval of the warrant register with a check date of November 15th, 2023, in the amount of $8,170,193.49.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Baldino, second by Trustee Schwingbeck. Any questions or comments from the board or from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. There are no recognitions or presentations, so we'll move on to citizens to be heard. Do I have any blue cards for individuals under citizens to be heard? Becky? No? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board on items not on the agenda? Melissa, what would we do without you?
Just a reminder, the second installment of the property tax bill is due December 1st, 2023. And what is the status of the property at Wilkie and Euclid?
Wilkie and Euclid. I'm not sure
You mean the
on which corner.
Racetrack property?
Yeah, formerly known as the Arlington International Racetrack.
The racetrack the demolition is still underway on that site. The village continues to work with the school districts, the Chicago Bears, all our stakeholders on resolving issues. So to continue the conversation forward on exploring the future use of the site.
Okay, please update the status on the website, Arlington Heights, the VAH.com website. And I sent a request to the special projects at VAH.com, but I didn't get a response about that property. And does the village manager make more money than the Federal Reserve Chairman, Powell?
I don't think that's an appropriate question, but I don't think so.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Melissa. Is anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the board on items not on the agenda? All right. Just give us your name if you would, sir.
Jay Shute. I'm a resident of Surrey Ridge, and I'm here to talk about the proposed development at South Arlington Heights Road, Full Circle. So I was talking to my neighbors, and most of them were not aware just because, you know, we got the letter, but they're busy living life and doing the things that they have to do. So when we talked to a couple neighbors, they visited some of the facilities that Full Circle had and talked to some of the people that were there. And the news that they received when they were there was not very, very heartening. So basically what I wanted to say is that putting that development where it is, it doesn't really fit but the village's original plans were for it. It would change the look of the entire area. It's a giant apartment complex with 25 units. And then I was thinking, why aren't more of my neighbors here? But
You know it's not on the agenda tonight.
I know, I heard about it, that it was on the planning committee and also that it was talked about last time and then it's going to the design committee. So if that goes to pass, we're worried that there's gonna be more crime in that area because I had family members that went and were going to move into a similar facility and that had people that were basically drug dealers living in there because the ADA's definition of disability is so vague and so wide that that would be who would be allowed to live in there, along with the people that actually have physical disability. So that is something that we're worried about in our neighborhood. Like, we don't want to increase crime, we want to keep crime not around. So I wanted to come and just talk to the board, and I'm not a public speaker, so this is kind of
Okay,
nerve-wracking.
well, this is an opportunity for you to address items not on the agenda, and that proposal is not on the agenda tonight. And so we hear what you're saying, and you'll have another opportunity if it does come before the board on a formal agenda. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Reckloff.
Mayor, one other thing I was going to say is if you are interested in that project, we do have an email list developed where you can receive updates on it, when it's going to be on the agenda and so forth. We don't yet have dates yet on when it may appear on future agendas, on the village board agenda at least. But I was going to give you my business card. If you want to email me, I can make sure you get on that list.
All right, anyone else in the audience wish to address the board on items not on the agenda? Just give us your name if you would.
Selina Miko, and I'm living in Arlington Heights, 125 East Emerson. And then what he was talking about, I'm in the same subject. So if I can have your email, it will be very helpful. We are just trying to work what's going on because so we are kind of scared, and then so many issues with this project. It's just we are concerned about, and we have to just keep eye on what's going on. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else on the on items not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll close the citizens.
Do we know right now
That-
which day it's gonna be?
Mr. Reckloff.
No, it's not yet been determined. You can go to the village's website under community development, and one of the projects listed is the Full Circle Development. Or if you email me, I'll put your name on an email list, and you'll be notified of any updates on the project, including upcoming meeting dates.
All right. So we'll close out the citizen. All right. Yeah, just give us your name if you would.
My name is Sarah Coco Solis. I live right across the field. I have a house, and then you guys gonna build the facility, whatever. I'm really against it because our neighbors are really safe, and we pay for $1 million to buy that house, and then we put our soul into it, and our family living there, and then I don't feel safe. You guys gonna build. The
All right,
facility.
ma'am, nothing's been decided yet.
I know. That's why
So-
I just want to say I'm against it.
All right,
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
Card?
Sure.
Yeah,
Happy to.
that's it.
All right, one more time. All right, please come forward.
Michelle Shoot. Mayor, I think you know where my stand is, but I just actually have a question. So as far as emailing the design committee, my neighbors actually, I talked to my neighbors came here and spoke to someone in the village because there's no email for them directly. So they were told that they can email the planning department,
Right.
and they will forward that to the committee members.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, so as far as emailing that, is it a regular email, like when we send an email, like I sent an email to Mayor I basically, and I'm pretty sure you were CC'd on the email, so,
Yes. If you email the planning department, then they will forward it to whoever you want to forward it to, whether it's the design commission or whomever. Same thing is while we do have individual official email addresses for village board members, you can either email them individually, or if you email a staff member, we can forward it to the village board as well. So
Okay.
whatever's easier for you.
okay, thank you for that. But my question is, so it's a regular email. So like when I send an email, so it's a regular email, just any person would send a regular email, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because the reason why I bring that up is because my neighbors were actually told, you can send an email to me and I will forward it to the committee members, but make sure it's only 300 words. And when he told me, I was actually like, what? So I just wanted to make sure that that was informed by my neighbor, to my neighbor, that he was told, you can email to me, I will send it to the committee members, and make sure it's 300 words. That's what was told to my neighbor.
And it could be in reference to something being read into the record. If you're expecting something to be read into the record at the meeting, sometimes there are some different commissions will have rules on how much can be read. Kind of like how we have a 3-minute rule at village board meetings. You can't get up and talk for an hour. That could be what he's referencing. But if you want to if it's not, you're not looking for something read into the record, you're just looking for something to communicate to the commission members or to the village board or to staff, there's no limit on it.
Okay, but generally an email is usually, or just a regular
Right.
Communication.
Correct.
Otherwise, you send out a letter.
Yes.
But, so I believe that my neighbor and as well as us, we were kind of upset about that.
Oh, I'm
Like,
sorry if there was some
Emails.
if there was some
words.
confusion on that, but that's something I can confirm with staff. If you want to, again, if you want to send me an email, let me know who it was you were speaking with. I can make sure we set that straight.
Okay, thank you very
Thanks.
much.
And it's not meant to limit your free speech at all. 300 word, it's a procedural restriction, I'm sure, in terms of the length of something that can be read into the record. And you can say a lot in 300 words. So thank you. Anybody else on the items not on the agenda? I'm going to close out the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda and move on then to old business. And we do have one item to report out from our committee of the whole meeting from earlier this evening, and I would call on trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I move now, as I did earlier today, to recommend that the Village Board of Trustees recommend to the Liquor Commissioner the issuance of a Class E liquor license to Days Restaurant Group Corp., doing business as Gumre Thai, located at 170 North Arlington Heights Road.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Grasse. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, congratulations again. Good luck to you as new owners of Gumre Thai at 170 North Arlington Heights Road. Good luck to you. There is no other old business, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any members of the board wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Any members of the audience wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Any members of the audience wish to vote no or pass on any item on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by trustee Tinaglia, seconded by trustee Baldino to approve the consent agenda. Roll call.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. We'll move on then to new business, and we do have one item to report out tonight. Hold on. That's the Golf 5X special use permit request for an amusement facility, large and restaurant variation for the property located at 622, 626, and 644 East Rand Road. Is the petitioner present? Why don't you come forward if you would, and just give us your name and tell us what you're looking to do here.
Gina Choi. Can I start the presentation?
Please.
Okay.
And there's a remote there if you want to turn it on the right-hand side, left-hand side rather. On the left-hand side, there's a sliding on off
okay.
button.
Okay. Got the link it? Okay.
All right, try now.
So we are thrilled to introduce Golf VX, a golf simulator facility that promises an exceptional golfing experience while also offering an enticing range of food and beverage options. In this proposal, we will outline the numerous positive impacts Golf VX will bring to Arlington Heights, showcasing how we will enrich the lives of our residents. First, Golf VX is dedicated to fostering inclusivity within the community. We will provide access to golf for all residents and non-residents, regardless of their experience level or ability. Two, Chicago's climates can often limit traditional golfing opportunities with an average of 133 days, about 4.5 months per year of rain, in addition to a long winter. Nevertheless, Golf VX provides a year-round golfing experience that remains immune to all weather conditions, offering residents the freedom to enjoy their beloved sport at their leisure. Golf VX utilizes cutting-edge simulator technology to faithfully recreate the landscape of prestigious golf courses from around the world. These cutting-edge features ensure the unparalleled golfing experience that closely mirrors and challenges the dynamics of playing on outdoor golf courses. At Golf VX, we not only focus on golf, but also on culinary excellence. Our resident restaurants offers a wide variety of delicious dishes that can be enjoyed both inside the bay and in common area, making dining a delightful experience whether you're playing golf or spending time with your loved ones. Our diverse menu is designed to satisfy our taste buds, and we offer a unique beverage pairing from Arlington Heights' first ever robotic bartender, the Maker Shaker. This innovative bartender can handle an impressive selection of 158 spirits of juices, elegantly displayed from the ceiling above the bar, making a perfect blend of technology, innovation, and craftsmanship. Before we proceed, allow me to introduce our team, exceptional team, to answer any of your questions today. We have Q Choi, USA CEO, and Brian Jung, Head of Commercial Service, and myself, Gina Choi, Project Manager. I would like to present an overview of our floor plan and the interior remodel, and please consider that our drawings are in progress. This is the entrance of our facility. This will be the bay area of where we could enjoy the golf simulator. And this is our Maker Shaker, a robotic bartender. Now let me show you these two videos that will summarize our presentation today. Okay, our next one will be for Maker Shaker, robotic bartender.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Perkins?
Thank you. Just like my golf game, my presentation won't be quite as good as the petitioners. But I'd like to just talk through what they're requesting. They are seeking a special use permit for a large amusement facility in the B3 zoning district up at South Point. It's in the former Laser Quest space. We've been working really hard with those property owners up there to re-envision that shopping center, and we've got At Home and the new outlots there, and it's really taking shape, and this will be another addition into the space that's identified here. We did take a look at the parking situation. We see no challenges or issues with the parking. They're well in excess of the village requirements. The parking counts show a significant ability to add additional parking or for additional parking for this use. We have reached out through code enforcement on the area designated as 2 here. That parking lot is in pretty poor disrepair. There's multiple owners in this shopping center, and so that particular parking lot is not owned by the landlord who's leasing this space. So that would have to get improved as part of the overall reciprocal parking agreement that runs with the property. During the Plan Commission hearing, there was a bit of discussion on the bicycle parking requirements in the village code, and it got a little complicated. So the board has a couple of options. One, per the Plan Commission, to grant the variation from providing 2 spaces, which is what the requirement would be, a rack for 2 bicycles, or a simplified condition, which is shown here, to install 2 bicycle spaces when they come in for their permit. So the Plan Commission deleted a more complicated condition dealing with the bike rack. It didn't need to be that complicated. We did change condition 4 to allow them to come to the board and to push off the providing of the parking plan to prior to issuance of a permit. And again, that has to be in accordance with all the rules and regulations that govern that property. So both staff and the Plan Commission recommended approval of this. It'll be a nice addition to the shopping center and bring more people to that location. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Charles, what is the staff recommendation then on the bicycle parking spaces?
We would recommend that the 2 bike spaces be included. I know there was a discussion about people not riding with their bike clubs, and there's no bike paths in that area, but Engineering Public Works just had an open house for the road diet on Windsor to bring bike routes to this area. And really, could be employees that are working there that may need the ability to ride their bike. So we would recommend the 2, bike rack with 2 spaces be installed.
Okay, thank you. If you could just come up, Ms. Choi. I'm just curious, what is I said 5, but it's VX, what does that stand for?
Golf VX Virtual Experience.
Virtual experience, okay, great. I really think this is a very unique business and a great opportunity for our community to bring in something new and different. And so including both the golfing simulator and the Maker Shaker. And so I'm all in favor of it. I would, could you just tell us about how many other facilities like this there are, either in the Chicagoland area or in the United States?
So if you're asking for Golf VX specifically, this
Right.
will be our first location. It will be our flagship, our flag store. And through this, we are planning to forgo for franchisee business throughout the world. We do have our facilities or other states that has our simulator installed to their businesses. And that's in, right now, LA, New York, New Jersey. Right now we're talking in Canada, so it's going to be all around. That's going to be popping up soon.
Okay, so there's your simulator is being used elsewhere, but this model with the
It's
Maker
the
Shaker
first,
is
yes.
brand new.
Yes, it will be first in Arlington Heights.
Okay, great. And so are you planning then to expand to other areas as well, other
Yes,
locations?
yes, that is our future plan.
Okay, great. Questions, Trustee Grasse?
Thank you for considering Arlington Heights, and what an innovative and exciting place to go. I have a quick question. How does a simulator work? When you hit the ball, I saw that it looks like it hits the screen, but then where does it go? Does it just drop
It
down?
hits the screen, it drops down. We
Okay.
have very technology where we have a sensor up on the ceiling where it radars all our movements. So the ball, and then there's a special ball that tracks the rotation of the ball, so it gets all the status as well. So yes, it hits the wall and it drops.
I was just wondering if it would bounce back. Wonderful.
It's all planned this. It just drops and rolls right back to where it should be to go into the hole to bring up the ball again.
Well, and it sounds like a fun activity place for people who are good at golf and those who are not. Would this be only for people over 21 so it would be open to
Your family,
all ages?
yes, you
Okay.
could, as long as they're able to hold the club. My 5-year-old plays it as well, so it is going to be a family place too.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this to Arlington Heights. It was definitely different, especially with the Maker Shaker. That's the really different part. A question about the simulator part. Will you have golf leagues too, like people have bowling leagues at bowling alleys?
Definitely. We're planning on that throughout the national, so we could be doing as all, so we could connect with every people that's in state who is able to play.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to have leagues. We're going to have camps for kids, like during summer, winter lessons for anyone who needs, to learn.
Okay. Is there some kind of ADA accessible opportunities, somebody in a wheelchair or some other disability
Yes, so
to be able to?
The city did require for us to access it, so we do have one bay that will be accessible for it.
Okay.
As well.
And since there,
And
I'm
I just
sorry.
wanted to point, this will be the first facility actually will have that accommodation.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Thank you. And since reading through the Plan Commission meeting minutes, and you're talking about it, that you'd also have children's parties there.
Yes.
So I assume the Maker Shaker can make and shake non-alcoholic beverages.
Definitely.
Okay. But that you will have humans who do the checks of
Yes.
the.
Yes, for this
Yeah.
location, we will have servers who will be able to ID for alcoholic beverages, and then who will be programming itself ourselves to serve the drinks
Okay.
to our customers.
All right, thank you. I think this is really, really innovative, and I can see can see it being really popular. And since it's also in a location that did have the Laser Quest years ago, it's I think a perfect location.
We're excited too.
Other members of the board? Seeing none. Any audience comments on this? Seeing none, what's the will of the board? We need a motion.
No, go ahead.
You can.
Let me see if I could I move to approve the, the Plan Commission recommendation with modified conditions and 2 bicycle spots, right? As discussed or printed in this. Let's see. Should have had you do it.
That's why I let you.
Correct. Yeah.
So there'd be
Pass
no,
them on.
no
Yeah,
vote.
Yeah,
I
some
need, I need some clarification.
Yes, so let me get here. So I move to approve the special use permit to allow an approximately 11,938 square foot large amusement facility on the subject property, and allow the restaurant with food and liquor service on the subject property with the variations listed in the agenda. Right, would that be correct?
If you intend to waive the requirement to have two bicycle parking spaces, then yes, because one of the variations they seek is waiver of those 2 spaces.
Okay, I'll move that to approve that.
Which is contrary
Thank
to
you.
the.
Oh, it's contrary to
Staff-
approve?
Staff recommendation was
staff
recommended to.
recommendation.
Okay, then I move to approve the staff recommendation for this facility and project, including the 2 bicycle spots, right?
Mr. Pastor.
Yeah, I think
It would be helpful for me to have this printed out.
Yeah, so there's four types of hold on. There's 4 types of relief that are requested here, and Director Perkins will correct me if I have this wrong. There's 2 special use permits. One is to allow the amusement facility. One is to allow the restaurant.
Okay, this is helpful seeing the project summary in front of me.
Then there
Okay.
are 2 variations that are requested. One is to waive the requirement for traffic and parking study, and the second variation is to waive the requirement to have 2 bicycle parking spaces. So the Plan Commission recommended all four, correct? Charles?
That is correct.
As you've heard tonight, staff recommends only the two special use permits and the variation regarding the traffic and parking study. The board has, you have discretion to decide whether to approve none, some, or all of the four items requested of you, with or without the conditions that have been, recommended, by the Plan Commission.
Charles, put that staff recommendation back up that you had.
Yes.
So would it be appropriate
The
for
Plan Commission
Trustee
recommendation.
Grasse to say that she would move to concur with the staff's recommendation and to make approval in concurrence with the staff recommendation? Would that be sufficient?
It would be, but I want to clarify, because I want to put it in language of zoning. If you're recommending to approve the two special use permits and the traffic study variation, I think that's just a little more explicit as to what it is, if that is the motion.
That is my motion.
Okay.
So I wish to approve I don't have it in front of me. It's hard for me to,
We'll put it back.
this doesn't, if that's,
Oops, there you go.
so I move to approve the special use permit to allow a large amusement facility in the B3 district and the special use permit to allow a restaurant in the B3 district, and with the variations required to waive the requirement for a traffic and parking study from a qualified professional engineer, and to waive the requirement to provide 2 bicycle parking spaces.
And staff was recommending to not waive that last one.
So the question is, do we want to have them provide the 2 bike spaces or not? That's kind of what it gets down to, I believe.
Okay, let me go back. Start from the beginning. The staff recommends that they provide the 2 spots.
Correct.
Okay, so from the beginning again, this motion is to move to allow the special use permit to allow the large amusement facility in the B3 district and the special use permit to allow a restaurant in the B3 district with the variations required to waive the requirement for a traffic and parking study from a qualified professional engineer and to provide 2 bicycle parking spaces.
So that would mean that they do not have to provide the parking spaces.
No, I
No,
think
she
that
said-
she said it correctly.
Yes. Do not have to,
She was suggesting that they do need to provide the bicycle parking spaces.
yes.
So I will second
Second.
that.
All right.
I understand.
We had a motion by Trustee Grasse, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. Further questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? It's perfectly clear, right?
Actually, no. Can I get
Please,
the
yes.
clarification on that? The commissioners require that it's not necessary. I mean, it could be waived to not have the 2 bike racks, but the staff is requesting. So when you say staff, so we need to provide the 2 bike rack is what you're.
The motion was for you to provide the 2
Yes.
bicycle spots.
Okay, so we have to provide now because commissioners said try to waive that off.
Right.
To be not necessary, so don't spend the money on it. So they asked to waive it to the staff.
Right. This board is saying that they concur with the staff recommendation that you should include those.
That we should include it.
Right.
Okay, so we're back to
Right.
it should include.
Right. But we haven't voted yet.
Okay.
Trustee Shirley.
Yeah, Charles, what do 2 spaces look like? What is this? Is it a bike rack with 2
Just
slots?
a small
or-
rack that allows you to put 2 bike spaces. It's not 2 racks. It's one small bike rack that allows 2 spaces to be connected. It's not a huge item. I think the way originally the condition was written made it seem much more difficult than it is.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to help you and show you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions from the board or the audience?
Mayor, if I may, before you vote, I want to just from a legal perspective, as I understand this, it's a motion to approve both special use permits and to approve the first of the variations on your screen.
Correct.
It is functionally a recommendation to deny the other variation. They do have an application for a variation from the bike parking spaces requirement. So functionally, what this is it would be a denial of that variation, which is why they would then have to provide them.
Actually, attorney, they actually didn't request this. This was the suggestion from the Plan Commission. So that this variation was not a request from the petitioner initially.
Okay.
I don't mean to complicate it.
I would suggest that the motion maker's intent is clear on this.
I understand the intent of it, so I appreciate that clarification.
Right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, good luck to you. I'm looking forward to, when do you think will open?
Well, we're hoping beginning of next year,
Beginning of next year.
first quarter.
All right,
First quarter,
with,
yes.
with bike racks, with a bike rack. All right,
With
thanks.
bike racks, with bike racks, okay. With bike racks.
If there's any question in terms of exactly what you have to install there, please contact the planning department.
Help you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, there is no other new business, and so we'll move on to legal. And the first item is a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with Urban Street Group LLC. Mr. Recklaus.
Mr. Perkins is going to introduce this one as well, although I may have some comments later.
Okay, thank you. We're really pleased to be at this point with a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, between the village and Urban Street. It's been a long time in the making. A lot of people have worked really hard to get to this point. So the area in question is the TIF 4 area along at Gulf Road and Arlington Heights Road. The area that Urban Street is proposing to redevelop is outlined in the red. They have International Plaza under contract, which has been a challenge to get under contract for past developers. The areas highlighted in yellow are the properties that the Village of Arlington Heights owns, and I'll explain that as I kind of walk through the MOU. Just by way of a recap, this TIF was established in 2002. There were a number of lawsuits that were filed immediately, and they took about 9 years to adjudicate. Early on, we began negotiations with the taxman group. Those negotiations were unsuccessful. Then in February of 2005, the village selected SRS and Target, and the village approved a redevelopment agreement in December 2005 with Target for redevelopment of this area. Then in May of 2007, the village and Target terminated that agreement due to various issues, including ongoing litigation, the inability to acquire other parcels in the area, and so that agreement was terminated. Since 2007, the village has acquired those 5 parcels in various years, and then in 2014, we went to the taxing districts and asked them if they would support a 12-year extension. And the local high school, elementary school, Park District Library, and some others supported that extension, and the village approved intergovernmental agreements with those agencies, allowing for some additional payments to them over years by increasing the base year in the final 12 years. So some of the impediments were, not only the litigation. After that, we had the 2007 recession that really didn't start, improving until 2010, 2012. Multiple ownership, that's a very difficult situation for developers. They're not going to wait to try to acquire all these different properties. Difficulty getting the shopping center under contract. This is only the second developer that I'm aware of that actually has had the shopping center under contract. Difficulty acquiring land. The village acquired 3 properties on the corner. That took from 2006 to 2013 to acquire, and then in 2016, we acquired a large parcel on Arlington Heights Road, and then more recently in 2021, acquired one of the properties on Gulf Terrace. And the reason for going through this is to kind of explain where we're at. So these are all the different development groups that we have attempted to negotiate with. I've talked about the first couple. The village designated Harlem Irving Companies as the developer at one point. We were unsuccessful on that. More recently, in 2017, an RFP was issued, and the village selected the Twins Group. We spent a year and a half or more negotiating a redevelopment agreement. That developer was unwilling to build the entire project, so we kind of concluded our discussions with them. And then in 2018, we spent a year or so with Strategic Real Estate Services, again trying to redevelop the corner. Then in 2020, Ryan Companies, developer that does senior living facilities, they submitted a Plan Commission application. We negotiated a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. They actually signed the agreement And then before the agenda went live, they withdrew and we pulled it from the agenda. And then since 2022, we've been working with Urban Street, trying to, come to this point where they can move forward with the rest of their plans and studies for this project. Very quickly in 2022, when we went through the early review with the board and talked about the site planning issues on a conceptual level, this is what the shopping center looked like at that time. It's in deplorable condition. The building department has been doing their best with code enforcement, but it's still, not something that, we want to see, continue in Arlington Heights. More currently, the building department provided these photographs from the recent adjudication hearing. It's an attractive nuisance. Buildings, storefronts are boarded up. Glass and storefronts are broken. So it's not a good situation. So that brings us to where we are on the MOU, and I'll kind of walk through that. So section 1 of the MOU is the acknowledgement, and it really basically says that this is non-binding except for a period of 180 days where the village designates Urban Street as the exclusive developer. The reason for that is Urban Street's going to spend, big six-figure dollars on site plans, engineering, all sorts of studies, and the village owns 5 of those properties. They'll be actually spending all that money on trying to, come up with a plan that can go through the zoning process. So they don't want to do that until they know or have a general indication that the village is willing to A, designate them as a developer, and then B, transfer those properties to them. This section also talks that the agreement, none of the details have been fully vetted. We've done a lot of work on, preliminary financial analysis, but it's not fully vetted at this point, and that neither the village or Urban Street is guaranteeing approval of the projects until those complete, studies and analysis have been done. So in other words, it is subject to change and adjustments as the development is finalized. It'll be driven by such factors as project schedule, changing interest rates, inflation, supply chain, labor shortages, assessment values, and final project costs and other variables. So there's still a long way to go on this project, but it is a very good first step. This is the concept plan that Urban Street has presented, and section 2 talks about the parameters of that plan, which would include 266 market rate units, generally in this area, and then the affordable senior living component in this area, which is the parcel that the village owns. And then on the frontage would be anywhere from 1 to 4 commercial outlots, users yet to be determined. So the developer is partnering with North Point at this time, and they're in negotiations with them. North Point has actually submitted to the state in 2023, and there's a multi-step process to get financing for low-income tax credits. In fact, the Illinois Housing Development Authority website states that 90% of all affordable rental housing in the United States is created through low-income tax credits. I'm not aware of low-income tax credits being able to be applied, within market rate buildings. They're typically in their own building, just like Crescent Place, is a low-income tax credit building with 40 affordable non-age restricted units up on Rand Road. This one is proposed to be senior living, much like many of our other senior living facilities. So, for example, Linden Place, just down the road, just east of here, that has senior living and non-age restricted. All the senior living units are in one building, 110 units just in one building. All the non-affordable age restricted units are in the buildings around there. As of August last year, Linden Place had an 8-year wait list, 441 people on the wait list. And Getke House, they have 118 units. That's just seniors and adults with disabilities. Cedar Village has 80 units. Again, it's just seniors and adults with disabilities. It's not non-age restricted beyond those with disabilities. And then we've got our other examples of senior living facilities that are age restricted, like Lutheran Home and the Moorings. They all have unique needs, the seniors, and so it's pretty traditional and common to have a senior living facility be an independent building. Even in October 16th, 2022, the Senior Housing Commission submitted a position statement to the village expressing their support for Urban Street Development's proposal for the senior living facility. They did acknowledge and recognize the concern about having the amenities be available, such as the pool. They did express that as a concern, but they did talk about that, being, support for that and a need. The other thing we had looked at a few years ago relative to senior living, the village commissioned a study with our neighbors, with Mount Prospect and Buffalo Grove, Palatine and Rolling Meadows. And that study indicated by 2018 there was a need of 541 affordable senior units. Since then, there have been 0 affordable units built in Arlington Heights. So there's a big need for senior affordable units, and 207 of those needed by 2018 were affordable independent living, which is what the proposed affordable development would be. I know there's people with concerns about that, and that's why I wanted to spend a little bit of time explaining the rationale for staff support of having that senior living facility be an independent building. We are proud of the inclusionary housing ordinance. We're one of only 8 communities in the whole Chicago metro area outside of Chicago that has an affordable housing requirement. And so we're pleased that we can get more units with what's proposed than what would be traditionally. Section 3 just reaffirms the village goals that it's a decades-long desire to redevelop this property, one of the village's highest priorities, and then a willingness to utilize appropriate incentives. Section 4 is kind of the meat and potatoes of the agreement, talks about the financial gap and requests for financial assistance. And there's 3 kind of buckets of assistance from the village that's proposed here. The first is $3.3 million in cash payment from the current fund balance that would be placed in an escrow. The second would be a revenue bond that would be issued prior to the project commencing. Once the project is ready worthiness, that revenue bond would then be deposited in escrow. And then later there would be a one-time pay-as-you-go junior lien note that would be only paid after the senior obligations were paid, which are to the school districts pursuant to our intergovernmental agreement, and the payments towards school children according to the state statute, and then after payment of the revenue bond. So there's no guarantee on that junior lien note. That really is dependent upon the tax increment coming in as projected. And it also defines what the pledged taxes are. So the pledged taxes are the TIF increment. It's just from this TIF project, existing TIF parcels, and new increment from this development, plus 33% of 1% sales tax of any sales tax generating businesses on those commercial outlets on Gulf Road. And part of our agreement with the school districts and the taxing districts in those IGAs is that the village would commit a third of its sales tax towards any obligations for this project. So that's consistent with that. This section 4 also talks about the TIF incentive and how it would be earned. There's still a lot that needs to happen. The developer needs to obtain their construction financing. Before that, they need to complete their zoning approvals and permitting. They need to have executed contracts and agreements for all the components of the project, including the construction. And then this section also talks about the flow of funds. We spend a lot of time on the flow of funds. We want to make sure that the developer's equity is used first. So even though the money is put in escrow, it would not be drawn down until the developer's equity of approximately $31.5 million is used. This number is different than in the attachment for the reason being there are some land sales in there that would not occur until later. Also, the one-time junior lien note, is shown broken out, and that would need to be covered by developer equity up front. The second drawer on the funds would be the TIF incentive, the $3.3 million from the current cash fund balance, and then the revenue bond currently estimated at $5.3 million. And as we get closer to project commencement, that number may change given interest rates, timing on the project and other things that I mentioned. Also in Exhibit C, you'll see there's a project true-up that talks about if prior to construction, the projected yields are in excess of the target IRR of 13.28%, that the developer would then pursue the undergrounding of the ComEd lines in front of their property. And if it still exceeded that target IRR, then there would be a reduction in the TIF incentive accordingly. And then it talks about the senior pledges that I just mentioned regarding students and payments to the school districts and other taxing districts. Section 5 talks about the conveyance of the village parcels. So as I mentioned, we have 5 properties. When they are transferred, we want to make sure they're conditioned upon approval of the zoning and approval of a redevelopment agreement, and that they satisfy all the conditions that are previously discussed and that will be detailed more in that redevelopment agreement. There's a small period of time after transfer before the developer may commence, even though they would have to have their construction loan, lined up and all their equity funded in the escrow. So to make sure that the project, if something were to happen, the village could get those properties back. The purchase and sale agreement would contain the right of reconveyance, so meaning the property could be reconveyed back to the village. If Urban Street commences construction when required, but has not conveyed the affordable senior property to the affordable developer, or that developer has not received sufficient funds, then the purchase and sale agreement will grant the village the right of reconveyance of that parcel in a pad-ready condition. So pad-ready meaning they will be providing detention. There's a stormwater detention site and an underground stormwater detention facility. Utilities provided to the property, graded. Access will be provided through the site to Arlington Heights Road because they'll need that for the rest of the property, and that property would be in pad-ready condition to move forward. I will say that the affordable developer has submitted for their preliminary. They received preliminary approval from IDA for low-income tax credits this year. There were 64 applicants, and there were 64 approvals. I don't know how many applicants, and they were one of the approvals. And then for full funding, there were 18 approved, and North Point was not one of those because the project is really not ready. They don't have any agreements. They don't have the project under contract. The project hasn't been zoned appropriately yet. And then Section 6 is as kind of a catch-all that sets forth other additional provisions that may be incorporated into the redevelopment agreement, such as completion and performance guarantees. So I know that was a quick run through, a detailed document that you have before you. Staff does recommend that the village board approve the resolution authorizing execution of the memorandum of understanding between the village and Urban Street, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know the developer and his attorney are here as well to answer any questions that the board may have, and of course Hart Passman is here as well.
Okay, thanks, Charles. I've been on the board the entire time of the history of this piece of property, and so besides Charles, I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to see this develop more than me, and so I very much appreciate Urban Street for coming forward and being willing to redevelop this property, and so we thank you for your hard work to this point. I know there's been a lot of effort put into this MOU, and so we appreciate all of the hard work. Just to confirm, if someone wants to come forward from you guys, I just want to confirm that this represents something that you've agreed to, and this is the final form of this MOU that you want to proceed to present before us this evening.
Yes, it is. My name is John Dennis with Urban Street Group, and you're correct. This is the final form that we're seeking approval of so that we can then proceed to work with the village on an RDA, a redevelopment agreement, to move the project to the next stage.
Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure that we're on the same sheet of music. So this has been agreed to between you and our village staff, and so we very much appreciate it. I do have one question for you or your team. And obviously, there's many, many components to this MOU, but the ones that we've received input and feedback on is the affordable housing component. And so one of the things that's in our staff memo, in our materials, is that Urban Street is currently negotiating with an affordable developer for the development of the affordable senior component. So that's true?
Yes, that's true.
And I know we talked a little bit about that when you were here before for early review, and I can't remember, did you identify somebody then that you were talking to?
Yes, they actually joined us when we presented.
Yeah,
for
that's
early-
right.
It was called North Point Development. They're a national, specialist in affordable housing using LIHTC, the federal program that funds the development of affordable housing.
Right, and this is still the people that you're talking to?
Yes.
Right. And so, what is your assessment in terms of whether or not they're going to move forward with that?
I spoke to them today, and they remain excited and committed to the project. They believe, as Charles mentioned, that there's a strong need for affordable senior housing in particular in Arlington Heights. There's wait lists for existing properties, so they believe they'll be successful in getting these federal tax credits. It's not so much a matter of if, it's kind of when. They might have to have multiple applications depending on the readiness of the property, but they feel very confident in the affordable housing component.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, just to add my 2 cents, this is an opportunity, as I said, when was it? 6 months ago? A year ago? Can't remember.
A little over a year ago.
A year ago, when we discussed this at early review. And obviously, there's a dire need, as was explained then and is explained this evening, for senior affordable housing within the village and within the Chicagoland area. And so this provides 37 affordable housing units for seniors within the village of Arlington Heights. So I'm very encouraged that we can help solve. We're not going to totally solve, but at least make a dent in that dire need here by this development. And so I very much appreciate your willingness to work together with the staff and with the community to help address that need. So thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor Hayes. So, Charles, could you put up a couple of those pictures of the existing conditions out there that you had in your presentation? It's amazing to me. Maybe I should speak a little up here. I remember when this was built. This used to be called Lohman's Plaza. Were you working here at the time? Were you here?
No, but I remember when it was built, yeah.
It was a beautiful blue and tiled, all these beautiful, colorful awnings. Lohman's was a ladies', I think, clothing store, was the main anchor. And lots of really nicely detailed, but unfortunately not weatherproof kinds of construction, not Midwest weatherproof. And it just became a mess. It's an embarrassment how this property has been behaving over the past 20 years, right? How long has it been in this bad a shape? At least 10 anyway, right? It's been bad.
It's been many years. I couldn't tell you how many that it's been in conditions like this.
I remember was it
not always?
When did the Target Greatland? That was a potential redevelopment. Was that in like the 05 time? Or?
The agreement was approved in December 2005 and then terminated in 2007.
Anyway, I am very excited about the idea of you guys coming here and fixing this mess. I wish you had a better attorney representing you over there. I tease, of course, because I know he's fabulous, and I know that you guys are working really hard together with staff to make things happen. This needs to be done. The one comment I'd have on the site plan, it seems like an awful lot of asphalt. If you want, can you go back to that site plan drawing you have?
Oops, sorry. I'll get there in a moment. Yes, there we are.
Yeah. I like the fact that you've got the retail opportunities across the southern edge there, and I think placement is all fine as you have it. I'm just wondering, is there any opportunity for any more green space anywhere in here? Can we do you expect, is that the parking requirement per the ordinance is what you have here? Are you over-parked or under-parked, or where are you at?
We're parked right where we need to be parked. We're not over, but we don't feel that we can really give up parking and have enough spaces. So it's certainly less asphalt than that is there now. So we think it will be an improvement. But there's green space, there's detention ponds, and there's parking spaces that are in garages on the first floor of the building. But really, the surface parking that we've shown is needed. If it wasn't, we would have we'd have more green space.
All right. Well, as you go through this, I just would encourage you any way you can to try and soften that up a little bit. It just seems like an awful lot. But anyway, my initial thoughts are thank goodness that we're at this point. I'm glad to see that something's moving forward, and I wish you guys all the luck to make it all come together the way it needs to for
Thank
all
you.
of us.
We're excited as well. Thank you.
Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for bringing this project to us again. Charles, just a quick question for you. The property picture that you had with the village-owned property, can you bring that up? So the front portion there along Gulf Road is going to be commercial space, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
If that last unit of affordable housing doesn't get built, you know, the funding can't be obtained. You had mentioned that that we can take that property back again.
That's correct. When we were discussing an early review in August of 2022, there were questions about what happens if they don't get funding. What's the fallback scenario? So, you know, in the MOU, there's the requirement that they continue good faith negotiations with this current developer. If that falls apart, you know, good faith efforts to get another developer on board.
Right.
And if that were to fall apart, then they would have to transfer that property back to the village in a pad-ready condition. So they will have invested money into the site to provide stormwater detention, utilities. They'll need to provide access through the property, and it would be pad-ready. And then the village could, you know, use its efforts to seek a developer to build that building.
Okay. And it would really be just that small piece of property on the very north side.
It would be this parcel
that,
here that
yeah.
I'm highlighting.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that that doesn't happen because it's a very small piece of property. So I'm hoping that you guys can find that funding. Otherwise, we're left with a very small little piece of property that's kind of nestled in not only this project, but those homes that are not in very good shape across the street.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges for developers seeking those low-income tax credits is, you know, control of the property.
Right.
The process does take quite a while, and most, you know, sellers of land don't want to tie their property up for that length of time.
Yeah.
So with this MOU, you know, maybe the developer can even, you know, use the MOU and start, you know, that process. And then as they go forward, you know, there'll be the redevelopment agreement that will be more, even further solidify that. So they'll have, at that point, and then they'll have a contract with Urban Street, they would have control of the property and have a greater success rate of seeking those funds and obtaining those funds.
So let's just say it doesn't happen, and you can't get funding, and now you've got 6 buildings on the site with no affordable housing. Are you giving thought then of putting some of those units into those 6 buildings, or what's your thought on that?
Our thought is that the best solution that we can offer is to revert the property to the village in better condition than we received it by having it zoned for a 37-unit building, improved by us with roads and utilities and pad ready. And we feel that if the tax credits weren't obtained in the first round, the village would be in the best position to be as patient as could be to obtain another affordable housing developer. We'd certainly give it several tries. We're not, our goal is to develop the affordable housing in partnership with another firm and to develop the market rate. So we're going to make every good faith effort to do that. But if it wasn't the case, we feel that the best hands for that parcel to be in would be with the village.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Trustee Baldino and then Trustee Dunnington.
Hear you at all, and this is an important question, and there is a mic, I didn't hear much of what you had said, and I'm really
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. I said that we would make very good faith efforts, several efforts, to partner with an affordable housing developer to seek the federal tax credits. We have one identified now. If that developer doesn't proceed, we have identified other backup groups as well. And if for some reason they can't do it, we feel that the village is in the best position to own the parcel, improved by us. They'd get the parcel back in better condition than we're receiving it, and then could continue to seek an affordable developer. But we fully intend to work with at least one or maybe two developers to get that 37-unit building built.
Okay. Trustee Baldino and then Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too am excited to see movement on this particular property. It's been a long time coming, and so I think we're all excited to see something happening. And Trustee Schwingbeck almost asked the question that I was going to ask, but it's related. And I'm curious what the implication is, and I don't know if staff or the petitioner will answer this, but if the worst comes to happen and the property reverts back to the village, what is the implication for the other part of the development, the other 6 buildings? Because then, in my mind, those 2 projects then become decoupled. I know we just talked about how there will be improvements to the property, but then they're decoupled, and so now they're not in compliance with our affordable housing ordinance. And so how does that work? What is the implication?
If I can jump in on that, our affordable housing ordinance provides the ability for the board to, there's the standard methodology where there's X percentage of units for different types of developments. And in this proposal actually exceeds the number of units that would be required kind of on the standard model. And then it also says that the board can engage in other creative ways to solve that issue. If there ever was a project that was going to demand creative solutions to its problems, it's this one. And, and I think, I'll talk more about that later. But what I was going to say is the intent is, as Mr. Dennis said, for this to proceed as planned. If for some reason the timelines get too off kilter, or they just simply can't get the tax credits, the other developer, then the way to establish this for them to qualify for our standards is to provide that unit, that land in a pad ready format that they've put the work into for us to find a partner to do it with. They also are foregoing any tax increment from that portion of the overall site, which then the village could use to help recruit and establish an alternative affordable housing developer. It's one of those things where it's a what if clause. It's not the intent, but when you work on a $100 million project, it's $13 million of the village's money and the rest of the developer. You have to have robust what if clauses, and that's really what we're focusing on here.
Sure. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the intent for the way this is worded is that we're not, whether things go as planned and everything comes up wine and roses, or the property reverts back to the village, the intent is not, as I said earlier, to decouple these 2 properties.
Correct.
Okay, so it's still going to be one development, and the meeting of the affordable housing ordinance would still take place with this.
It would still be fulfilled on that site, just in a different manner.
Right. Correct. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
And just to follow up on that, so if that situation occurs where the village would have to find a developer, let's say that happens, that's built, so those senior residents would still have access to your amenities.
Yeah, if and when a building is built, what we've discussed in the MOU is that there would be some sharing of the amenities, particularly the pool, the outdoor amenities of our project, with whatever building comes to be on that site, the 37-unit building.
Okay, because I think that's important to not decouple it. I mean, it's representative of your intention to have that be part of the development, regardless of how it gets built or who builds it, that they would still be part of the development by being able to utilize the common area
Yes,
amenities.
the coupling, if you will, works both ways. On the one hand, we still would be, there would be a mechanism to satisfy the affordable housing requirement, but then also the exterior amenities, they'd still have access to that unless they had comparable amenities on their own. That's kind of the standard that's written into the MOU. And I do want to point out too, and I think Mr. Perkins brought this up, but just in reference for the folks at home that Mr. Tinaglia brought up, the board will get another opportunity, couple of opportunities to vote on this project. One, this project has to go through the zoning process, and you will have all your normal role in that in terms of the site layout and how much green space and how things work. Second, there'll be a formal redevelopment agreement that will be a more detailed version of the MOU that also will come before the board to iron out these details. But this is a critical path item to make sure we know what terms we're working under, so we all feel comfortable proceeding is the way I would characterize that.
Okay.
And if I can add, as part of that, there'll be all sorts of cross-access easements for vehicle, pedestrians. There's a walkway that goes to the park immediately on the northeast of that site. So it is going to be intertwined, whether it's this developer or some other developer on the affordable piece. Also, as part of that zoning entitlement that the village manager mentioned, the affordable developer will be presenting their plans. We'll see what kind of amenities they're proposing inside the building. We haven't seen any of that at this point. So that will all come forward through that zoning entitlement process as well.
Okay, Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing this project to the board. I think everybody really does want to see the area developed. It's definitely an eyesore as it is right now. For Mr. Arkless, for the current owners of the property, I know that they have applied for a demolition permit. When do you expect the property to be demolished?
We don't know. They have not complied with. We've initially gave them some leniency because they applied for the demolition permit, but as of this past week, because they haven't proceeded with that, we've begun to fine them again, and we've told them we will continue to fine them until they actually proceed with the demolition, because obviously the condition of that site is not to our code and is an attractive nuisance and everything. It speaks for itself. But we do not have a timetable yet from them. They have, applied for and been approved for a demolition permit, but they have not begun work or provided a timetable.
Okay. And so is there an expiration date for that approval?
We would, work with them if they had a reasonable plan on the timetable. I believe, though, the current to show you we're trying to be conservative. The current concept in the MOU actually has the developer doing their own demolition in the event that the current building owner does not do it. If the current developer does it, that's a nice bonus that helps this process and helps give the plan a little bit more elbow room. So we're not relying on that for this project to move forward, but we certainly want to get that going as quickly as possible, given the conditions.
So if this project didn't move forward, would the area be demolished?
If the existing building owner proceeds with demolition, yes.
Okay, so that eyesore will be gone.
If they proceed with it. They so far have not given us a timeline. They applied for the permit, like I said, as a way to kind of help us not continue to fine them. But I'm not counting on it at this point, is I guess what I would say.
Okay. We talked about this a little bit already, about why senior affordable housing. In our inclusionary housing ordinance, we identify 4 groups that we're kind of targeting, and seniors aren't one of them. We're looking for residents, current Arlington Heights residents, veterans, people with disabilities, and employees of Arlington Heights. So again, why did you decide to do senior housing for this project?
To me, When we came before the board before in the early review process, there was a pretty overwhelming sentiment from residents that there was a strong need for senior housing in particular, senior affordable housing, and that was highly desired. And again, there's waiting lists, there's other projects like that in the village, and there's strong demand for them. So part of it was a response for a particular need for senior housing here in Arlington Heights. It's also very common for seniors to have their own building, their own amenities, and own sort of environment. So it lends itself to the building as shown in the upper left corner as its own property. But it was our understanding, and still is, that was what was desired by the village in this case. It was a certain form of affordable housing where we could find demand and exceed the inclusionary housing ordinance by about 40% with 37 units. So we thought it was a good positive solution to meet and exceed the ordinance and also redevelop the site, which we all want.
And so is it going to be independent living?
Yes, it's not. There's a lot of terms for senior housing. It's not assisted living. It's independent, senior, age restricted, affordable housing. There is not a care or necessarily a kind of a nursing home component to it. It's just independent living.
Okay. And then I think this is for staff. So if this memorandum memorandum was approved, would this still go to the Housing Commission since it does not follow the inclusionary housing ordinance, or would they just not be a part of the process?
I believe it did go on a preliminary basis before early review, and it would still go to the Housing Commission when they submit, all their plans and documents. So it would go to the Plan Commission for all the zoning entitlement, it would go to the Design Commission for design review, and then it would go to the Housing Commission for their review, and then all of that would come before the board for, all of their zoning entitlements, and that would all be occurring as we, sit down and negotiate the redevelopment agreement at that same time.
So could the Housing Commission make any recommendations about the inclusionary housing ordinance, or they wouldn't be able to since it's being done in a very different way in this instance?
I think they could, review it and provide their comments and recommendations as they saw fit. So I think, and I'd have to go back and look at what they did look at. So I don't want to, I did not look that up before tonight's meeting, so I don't recall exactly if they had any issues or concerns, quite frankly.
It's similar to when, if a petitioner comes before the board for early review, the board may say, I really like this, or I really don't, or whatever. And then if they go to the Plan Commission, the Plan Commission doesn't necessarily have to be hamstrung by what the board said in early review. They can still make their own recommendation just with the understanding that it's going to eventually come back to the board. And so I think certainly things like this are going to provide some indication to the other commissions of what the village board's intent is. But if they want to say, well, wait, what about this? That's the purpose of the process. They certainly can.
Okay. And for Mr. Passmore, do you think that we're violating, there's any liability that we're violating our current ordinance? Since the units are segregated, that goes against the current ordinance, and they're being built at different times. And again, it's not to our preferred target group.
No, Trustee Dunnington, I see no liability at all. The village's affordable housing ordinance is its own creation. It's within the discretion of the board, both just as under its municipal authority, but also under home rule authority. So I see no liability at all.
Okay. I'm concerned about the precedent that it sets for future developments if we're not taking those things into consideration. So I would actually move to approve the MOU between the village and Urban Street, but with the following changes so that in the section 2B, that the market rate component will comply with the village's inclusionary housing ordinance, and to just remove 2C from the MOU.
Right, Wait, hold on, just to clarify, 2B, can somebody tell us exactly what we're talking about here? Which one's 2B and 2C?
Yeah, I think if I understand correctly, section 2B states generally that the market rate portion of the development consists of 6 buildings with 266 market rate units. Section 2C refers to the 37-unit affordable senior living component of the development. If I understand Trustee Dunnington's motion correctly, and please correct me if I don't, the section referring to the market rate would provide that the market rate must comply with the village's inclusionary housing ordinance, and then Trustee Dunnington would have section 2C effectively removed.
That's correct.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second?
I believe it's worthy of conversation by the board to determine the will of the board, so I second it.
All right, there's a motion and a second. So further discussion. Trustee Grasse.
Sure. I have a number of comments. I haven't made them yet. First, I want to say how grateful I am to Urban Development Group. We need this developed. It needs to be done for our businesses, for our residents, for our community. I am so grateful and thankful that you want to do this here. So I want to make that very clear. It needs to be done. I have appreciated your work and desire to come here and do this. And, not either or, and I am a strong believer in the inclusionary housing ordinance and the need for it. And 3, I want to also state that I believe in compromise. I believe in creative solutions for all parties, really for the greater good, the best benefit. So I just want to say those 3 statements are where I'm coming from all of this. And part of my reason that I second this, and I believe it's important for conversation with the board, is this is our ordinance. We have already made this a strategic priority to have affordable, inclusionary housing. And with our budget meetings recently, we talked about one of our Arlington Cares is no longer going to be around, and their biggest need for community assistance was rental assistance for our residents. It is a huge concern. Crescent Place just opened, and they have a huge waiting list of people. They're already full. There is a huge need for affordable housing in our community for our people. And we need more affordable housing. We need senior housing. So again, I'm grateful. I appreciate that you want to provide more units. I think that's great. I think and know that there's a need for senior affordable housing. But as Trustee Dunnington mentioned, here are my concerns. That it's not inclusive, that it is separate, that it's not being built at the same time. And I understand it's a different development, but it's the same unit as Trustee Baldino talked about, and that's important for my understanding that this is one development. It just so happens you are seeking to have the senior housing be a separate building. So I hear that part, that it is one unit, but it's not going to be happening at the same time as is part of our ordinance. The other thing that I just want to mention that has been a bit of a concern that was in here, and you said it tonight too, most amenities are shared. I don't like the most, and tonight you said some sharing of amenities. You either are inclusionary or you're not. So I have to just admit that that is a concern for me. Even if this happens with a separate building, that there are only some shared amenities. If these units were within all the buildings, it would be completely shared amenities. So that is just a concern I have too. And again, the reason I just want to hear what the rest of the board has to say about this and have this conversation is that I really am concerned about not honoring our inclusionary housing ordinance and the precedent it may set, and just really the strategic priority we have in making more affordable units. All of my concerns about not honoring this ordinance we have is not an either or with what you are providing us. I am very grateful that you want to do this, and this is my concern. So that are my comments as I want to share for everybody else and hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. To continue the conversation then, as I understand it, if we strike C, there will still only be 6 buildings. the seventh building would not ever happen. That's how I read this MOU. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, as it's written, but it's not that simple to strike C. I would, if that's the will of the board, then it should be tabled because the whole economics of the project will change. It's all based on projections based upon this formula. And so if there's a different building and it's, the units are spread throughout the development and they're not senior, they're non-age restricted units, then the increment changes. 40% of the increment has to be held back for payment to the school districts, and we know there are more school children in affordable units than there are in non-affordable units. So everything about the economics of what we're talking about will change. So if that's the will of the board, then it really should be tabled, and we get given direction and try to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, I'm not done yet. So back to the amenities, as I was reading through it and the sum, the saying if it's not otherwise available, to me it seems like, well, if we go forward with this and there's a senior building, if the senior building has a workout room and the other buildings have a workout room, my guess, if it were me living there, I'd go to the workout room in my building. And so I guess I'm wrestling with this by saying, just because we're saying, some of the amenities, it doesn't mean that there'll necessarily be different amenities in the two different locations. You wouldn't be, if it was going forward as a senior building, you would not be in control of that, correct?
It will be a senior building built by a separate developer,
Right.
separate owner. So I can't say we're in control of the amenities inside that building. I imagine that they will be different amenities catering to the resident population of that building, and the market rate amenities may be different. What we've discussed and proposed and had agreement with the staff on was a sharing of amenities, exterior amenities, because that is the way we see it as being the most feasible to share amenities. There's all kinds of liability and other issues that are opened up when residents of one building, whether it's affordable, senior, not market rate of one building, enter into a building of another property owner. So that there's complexities there, and the compromise that we found was sharing of exterior amenities. That's why I said some. It's not in any way to be exclusionary. It's trying to be inclusionary and to honor this inclusionary housing ordinance. That's what we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not only trying to comply with it, but we're trying to exceed what the code says. And this is the solution we found. We found a way to attract other capital, federal tax credits to build this building to exceed and honor your ordinance. That's what we're trying to do. And if that section is struck where the market rate has to comply with the inclusionary housing ordinance, we simply can't do it. It's not feasible. If it was, we would have already. So I'm not saying that to be antagonistic in any way. I'm just saying that, to my knowledge, a project has not been built or realized yet that exactly complies with the letter of the ordinance. So we're trying to find a creative solution for the ordinance, but also for this property, which has been trying to be developed for over 20 years now. So there's all kinds of challenges. There's a long list of other developers, and we're here with a solution, which we think is a creative and a very positive one. So that's what I would say. I don't think it is feasible to have the market rate comply with the ordinance as it stands. The proposal that we have is to exceed the ordinance in this way.
As I recall during our discussion at early review, one of the topics for senior housing is that, frankly, it's easier to get financing. Or there's maybe not easier, but there's more availability of financing for senior building. Do I remember correctly?
I can't speak exactly for North Point, but what they had said was that they felt, these credits, getting the tax credits is a very competitive process. And they felt that if it was senior housing, it's a unique product type or property type, and that they have a better chance of obtaining the federal tax credits. That because there's such an overwhelming need for senior housing in Arlington Heights.
Okay, thank you. And, you know, so I too want to see this developed as much as anybody else does. And frankly, I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I'm actually supportive of the senior building. I've had people talk to me about how they would prefer that. And so I would not be in favor of the proposed motion. Thank you.
Yeah, I would not either, for one of the reasons that you just indicated. But as Mr. Passman pointed out, this is our ordinance, the Affordable Housing Ordinance, the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance is our ordinance. And there's very few ordinances that we haven't granted variations to. You know, and so this is a situation where you have to look on a case-by-case basis. The ordinance gives us some basis to look at as a model, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to follow it to the letter of the law. And so given the uniqueness of this property and the fact that it does exceed in terms of the number of units that it actually provides for seniors, which is a dire need. I mean, we've heard that there's 441 people waiting for Linden Place for seniors, and so there's a dire need for senior affordable housing in the village of Arlington Heights. And so I think we have to look outside the letter of that ordinance and really look at what makes sense for this particular property given its history. And so I'm not in favor of the motion. I am in favor of the MOU for those reasons. Mr. Recklaus?
I was just going to point out, you know, there doesn't have to be a modification of the ordinance or anything done. The ordinance itself, I mean, speaking of the letter of the ordinance, Section 71711 reads, "The village board may grant relief from the strict application of the standards set forth in this article upon finding that due to specific and unique circumstances which are set forth in writing, undue hardship would be caused by the strict application of the standards and requirements set forth in this article." So it clearly, the ordinance gives the board clear authority to, you know, look at each unique circumstance and determine what's the best way to achieve the aims of the ordinance, given those circumstances. And that's obviously up to the board on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say. I appreciate that further explanation. But this is not a developer that's trying to run away from the ordinance. This is a developer that is really trying to meet at least the spirit of it. And so I very much appreciate their efforts in doing that, and will provide at least a dent again in the senior affordable housing need. And so I want to work with them. I don't want them to walk away, and that's what I fear will happen if this motion is granted. So further questions or comments on that? Trustee Schwingbeck, you had something.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. No, I was just going to say I really like the project. I want to see it happen. I want the affordable housing as well, and I feel that you're going to make every effort to do that. I'm not in favor of the motion that was put here. You know, one of the things, and I've given this a tremendous amount of thought, and I've talked to people. You know, you had said earlier that some of the amenities would be similar. And, you know, I'm certainly at this point in time not going to be a resident there. I think it's for our seniors, and it's affordable housing. But I look at things that maybe I'm involved in my life, whether it's hotels, air travel, gyms, you know, wherever we go, there's places that are a little bit more affordable than other places. There's hotels that are a little bit more affordable than other hotels. You're traveling on an airline. There's coach and there's first class, and there's areas to sit on the airplane where you get a little bit more leg room, and you get what you pay for, and I understand that. And I just, me personally, I don't think that everyone is necessarily going to have everything the same. So that's where I kind of stand on the amenities. But yet I think you're making an effort to build a really nice building that has some amenities for that particular building and for the particular senior component to it. So I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'd like to see the project move forward.
Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else on the board before we go to the audience? We do have a motion on the floor, so you can have a seat.
Thank you.
We're going to go to the audience. We just have 3 blue cards on this item, but we certainly would welcome other comments as well. So you're just reminded of the 3-minute time limit, and the first individual is Heidi Graham.
Hello. Pretty sure everybody can hear me with or without the mic. I'm Heidi Graham, and I am a nearly 30-year resident of Arlington Heights. First off, thank you all for your service to our community. I know how hard you work. I really want to thank Trustee Dunnington and Trustee Grasse for being advocates for affordable housing. Before I get to my main point, I want to note that my mom, who is 88, but incredibly independent, she walks on my treadmill twice a day, 15 minutes a day, feeds my dogs. She's very independent, goes up and down stairs all day long. But she chose to live with me after my dad died rather than in the senior living community where she was. And when I lived with my mom for 2 months in that senior housing, trying to get her through her grief after my dad died. And when I drove her away from there, every single one of her friends would have rather been in something inclusive than exclusive. I promise you that. Affordable housing, I just want to define for those playing at home, is housing for residents with a household median income of 60% or less of the average of the community, and that rent should not exceed 30% of the household income. It is not Section 8. I think most of my friends keep thinking that affordable housing and Section 8 are the same thing, and I think it's important for our residents that we define that for them. My parents long had a home in Mammoth, California. It's an idyllic setting in Northern California. It began as a small community and homes were affordable. But in the 50-plus years that they owned that home, property values soared to the point that anyone who lived and worked in that community could no longer afford to stay, resulting in an employment crisis for restaurants, schools, and other area employers. Having built a business in Arlington Heights for almost 20 years, I can confidently say that a business will only thrive if it has great employees. If Arlington Heights really wants to remain a viable community for businesses to operate here, like VX Golf, who we saw earlier, or the restaurant, or the Bears, we must be forward-thinking. We must make sure that we have affordable housing for many income levels and many community types. We are already seeing a crunch at our park district and schools for support staff. Good luck finding subs right now. We can guarantee this problem will get worse and not better if we don't approach everyone's most basic need, and that is housing, in a forward-thinking manner. We must hold developers to a guarantee of affordable housing, especially when taxpayer money is being utilized. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thanks, Heidi. Next is Linda Wasey.
Hi, I'm Linda Wasey. I understand the question before you today is whether to approve or deny the memorandum of understanding regarding this project with the developers of Urban Street Group. The question for me is whether you, the mayors and the trustees, will allow Urban Street to go ahead with a project that in many ways is direct opposition to the rules set down in the inclusionary housing ordinance. Some developers will try and try to get their way, like integrating the affordable units into the whole as stated in the ordinance, or setting up a separate building for affordable housing, knowing that it takes years for the Illinois Housing Authority to fund the project because the fund for small they fund only a small number of projects each year, so you have to reapply every year. So with the market rate part going up a couple of years earlier than the affordable part, this is in direct opposition of the ordinance. I know we've kind of been talking about that this evening. I was at the Design Commission meeting last month, and Bradley Allen is putting up 301 units with 30 affordable integrated units in the project. This group was just approved a few weeks ago. They followed the ordinance. So if Bradford Allen follows the rules, I wonder why the urban street isn't. I'm just wondering whether you've thought about that. But I do know these are hard decisions for you to make. It's hard to continue with each developer who comes forward to enforce the ordinance. But you all, many of you voted for the ordinance, and you saw the vision. You saw the purpose of the ordinance, and you saw that the rules were just and fair. And you saw that it was going to make structural changes in Arlington Heights for young adults who just are starting their careers and they need an apartment, veterans, and servers and cashiers and other people who are working at the businesses that you frequent. So I ask you to think about whether the Urban Street Group is honoring the ordinance rules or not, and whether another developer will see your vision. So I support a no vote on this issue. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Linda. Next is Keith Moons.
Thank you, President Hayes. Appreciate the opportunity here. Regarding this issue, aside from the multiple violations to our IHO that's being reflected in this memorandum here, that if they had to be changed, it would require a vote from the board. And under Section 7-1711, it grants relief. The board has to do that, and the only way they can do that is to vote to allow the ordinance to change. So to me, this still looks like two projects to me because of the segregation of the senior units into one building. Project 1 is the affordable housing development in Building 7 that has to be developed by a third-party developer with or without IDA credits. But by November 30th of 2025, it'll be the village's responsibility to develop that parcel from a pad-ready site. And this development is supposed to have 37 affordable units. Project 2 out there is USG is to develop buildings 1 through 6 with 266 market rate units with 0 included affordable units. You know, since this is a separate project, completely different, as much as you want to try to put them together, they're not. You got a third party working it all on their own. We could end up with that, trying to develop. It is two separate projects, and so they're required to come up with 27 units, 266 times our 10% affordable units. So the grand total of included affordable units at International Plaza is 64 units is what's going to be out there. 37 in Project 1, 27 in Project 2. As it is now, they're showing 27 units short, not more than we're asking for. So it is unclear, you know, how the included affordable units in a separate project, if they're ever built, if it's ever built, somehow fulfills the affordable housing requirement for USG in Project 2. For them to get $13.75 million of our TIF incentives for an expected internal rate of return of 13.28%. That is an awesome return. I'd like to invest in that somehow. And so USG's excuse that it's just financially infeasible, like the previous speaker said, it is feasible because we're seeing it done. that it's not feasible, it just doesn't sound to be true or to ring true. So I would ask that you consider voting for this motion that puts this kind of restrict on our ordinance, allowing for the market rate to come up with their responsibility and not use what's going on in a third project over here to somehow fill their requirement. And that's IDA subsidized besides. So we're going to have IDA subsidize USG's requirement for affordable housing. So I'd encourage you to vote for the motion as it stands.
Okay, thank you. Next is Janice Ferris.
Hi, I'm here for a friend of mine who is in her 80s and is unable to make it here, but she wrote this. So I learned today that the vote on this memorandum of understanding will come before you this evening. Unfortunately, I am unable to physically be there tonight, but I want to express my deep concern and opposition to its adoption. To agree with this memorandum will be to ignore the intent of the inclusionary housing ordinance already in place in the village and will thwart the intention of having affordable housing integrated with the units and buildings not so designated. I am deeply concerned that a plan to construct only 6 of the 7 proposed buildings makes it near certain that there will be no integration of market rate and affordable units, nor will there be equity in access to amenities in this development. When we separate one group from another, particularly based on the assumed deficits of one group or another, we undermine the hopes of a holistic community, which is, I believe, a high value in the community that is the village of Arlington Heights. I have lived in this village since 1955, and as a citizen of this community, I ask you to hold to the high standards it seeks to exhibit. Thank you for your service to Arlington Heights. Signed, the Reverend Janet Niemeyer of South Mitchell Street, Arlington Heights.
Okay, thanks, Janice. Next is Christina Crucius.
Good evening. Thank you, President Hayes. My name is Christina Cruzius, and I live at 204 North Patton Avenue. I'm asking you to either support this amendment that Trustee Dunnington has proposed, or to vote no on this memorandum of understanding being presented by Urban Street. I am proud of the inclusionary housing ordinance the Village Board passed a few years ago. I have a feeling that many of you share that sentiment. However, we didn't just pass the inclusionary ordinance just for fun or to try to look good on paper, or at least I hope we didn't. We passed this ordinance because residents of Arlington Heights have repeatedly shared concerns about the need for affordable housing in this community. We passed this ordinance because the terms and enforcement of the previous policy made it too easy for developers to shirk their duty to provide affordable units. We passed this ordinance because we value diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let me especially emphasize that last word, inclusion. That means that affordable units must be integrated throughout the complex with the same access to amenities as market rate units. And dare I say, available at the same time? This should also mean that people of all ages and ability levels have an opportunity to rent affordable units. I currently work as a paraprofessional, working with students with disabilities, and my income is not far off from that threshold of qualifying for affordable housing. One of the main reasons I can continue to afford to live in Arlington Heights is because my family grew up here and I have the privilege of living with them. In August of 2022, Urban Street Group came before the board to present an early review of their proposal. Several trustees, and let me be clear, all of the residents who spoke, including myself, expressed concerns about the ways this project did not comply with the inclusionary housing ordinance. I'm disappointed that a little over a year later, nothing has been done to remedy this. We can do better. I understand that tonight's vote is technically non-binding. However, you as the village board will still be sending a message about your values and expectations to the developer and other commissions that may review this project down the road. If the board approves the memorandum as originally written, we send the message that we as a village are okay with ignoring the ordinance. I am not comfortable with setting that kind of precedent, especially so early in the life of the ordinance. Let's not compromise our commitment to inclusion. Unless this memorandum is amended to fully comply with the inclusionary housing ordinance, I ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Christina. Anyone else in the audience wish to address the board on this agenda item? Great, Dr. Mato.
I'm George Mato, and thank you, Mayor. I'm here representing the Senior Citizens Commission, and we want the senior affordable units. This building is actually the linchpin. We wouldn't be here tonight if that building wasn't proposed, and it really does fulfill the the inclusionary housing ordinance. That is the problem. I'm afraid that we'll go through this whole process and we'll wind up with no affordable housing. There should be some guarantee that those affordable units will be built. Otherwise, it's farcical. Again, we wouldn't be here tonight, we wouldn't be talking like this if the original proposal did not sync with our ordinance and the most important aspect, which was the number of affordable units. The amenities, we can negotiate swimming pools or things like that. But what I'm concerned about and what the Senior Citizens Commission is concerned about is we'll go through all of this and we won't wind up with any units. As it stands now, who's going to do it? The developer can't do it. I think they've done a great job. I appreciate their efforts. They can't do it. Can we do a better job? What's going to happen if we don't get affordable units? That means that they were able to build a big project, avoid the ordinance, and we get nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, George. Anyone else in the audience? All right, all right, one more. Just give us your name, please.
Hi, Shannon Silverman.
Oh, Shannon, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I do have a card from
Okay,
you.
that's
I'm sorry.
okay. We both got glasses on though. So I'm just going to be brief. I agree with so much of what was said here tonight. I live in Arlington Heights, lived here for about 20 years, live about 2 blocks away, and am very proud that you adopted, first of all, the inclusionary housing ordinance. And I wanted to first thank Trustees Padovani, Tinaglia, Scaletta, LaBedz, Rosenberg, Canty, Baldino, Schwingbeck, and President Hayes for in fact adopting this, and the rest of you for hopefully seeing it through so it lives and is just not on paper. I appreciate the motion that was made by Trustee Dunnington and the conversation that followed. I would like to see the spirit of the inclusionary housing ordinance followed through. I can appreciate how difficult of a project this is, and if the integration cannot happen with the units, and the concurrent development of the building happen along with the other 6 other buildings, then I would strongly hope that when it comes time to develop the real estate development agreement, that actual milestones are built into what good faith actually means. I understand as a lawyer myself that a memorandum of understanding can only have good faith in it and only goes so far. I'm not used to this topic, excuse me. However, when it comes, if you want to keep going through with what I'll characterize as a spin-off of the affordable housing into the senior segregated building, I think we all want to see it actually happen. And I absolutely commiserate with the senior fears of going through this whole process and ending up with no affordable housing. So I would hope that when it comes time to negotiate as a fallback position, the actual definitive agreement, that specific benchmarks and milestones are put in on what constitutes good faith follow through. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. Good comments. Anybody else in the audience? All right, I have no other blue cards, right, Becky? Okay. I'll come back to the board then for further discussion on the motion. Just to follow up, we've adopted not just this ordinance, but affordable housing is one of our strategic priorities. We just did that several months ago. And so it's very important to all of us. Shannon just indicated that it was unanimous when we voted on the affordable housing, inclusionary housing ordinance. So this board is committed to it. And so we want to make it happen in whatever way we can. And so we have to look at the realities of this particular situation. And I don't want to see 37 units, which exceeds the code, which exceeds the requirement, walk away from this village in the face of this dire need. And so I'm willing to go outside of the letter of this ordinance and really honor the spirit of it, which I think we're doing in this particular MOU. And so I am definitely in favor of the MOU as proposed, and will be voting against the motion on the floor. So further questions? Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor Hayes. I think this is a really good example of the idea that every project is different. Every project has its own unique challenges, and some of them are based on the land, some of them are based on location, some of them are based on finances. It could be a dozen different things that affect how a project gets put together and how it ends up. And this one, for decades, has been a challenge. It's just been really, really tough to find the right partnership, the right pieces of the puzzle to make something good happen. And is it perfect? No, it's definitely not. Is it in a position where I think it belongs to get to the next level? Definitely yes. Are we going to get some really good things out of it? For certain. And are every single one of the topics, 5-star hotel ratings? No, definitely not. But boy, I will take this over what we have there any day of the week, especially knowing that that building of, is it 36 units?
Proposed at 37 senior
37
affordable.
37 affordable units that we don't have right now. I think it's wonderful, and I don't think it's about feeling left out or some sort of an oddball thing off to the side here. I would expect that it is every bit as attractive as the other buildings. I expect it will be built, and if for some reason it's not done by this developer, it'll be done by someone else, even and including us with our housing commission involved at it somehow. So I'm not in favor of the motion on the floor. I am in favor of this project, and I hope that in time it comes.
Okay, Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say I do appreciate everybody who's spoken and everyone who has emailed. I'm always been very supportive of affordable housing in this community, and I think that the senior housing is affordable housing that we need. We worked really hard, many meetings, to come to a point where we actually implemented an affordable housing ordinance. And one of the things that we wrestled with was senior housing. And so because it was determined to be difficult to include senior housing in developments that are assisted living, and how do you account for what's the housing and what is the other part of that housing, we finally decided that it wasn't doable. But the Senior Commission has continued to ask that we consider more affordable senior housing that isn't assisted living, that people could like some of the ones that have been mentioned previously. And so I think this does meet the spirit of our affordable inclusionary zoning, affordable housing inclusionary zoning ordinance. And as I said earlier, and as Trustee Tinaglia said, no, it's nothing. It's not perfect. I don't think we've ever had a project that was absolutely perfect that we voted on. But I do think that given the history of this site, which Charles went through, we've got to do something. And I would like to move forward with the original MOU.
Okay, further questions or comments? Trustee Grasse.
I have one comment I'd really like to just make before the vote. I agree with Trustee Tinaglia and the others in the unique property and the circumstance of this property and the importance of getting something there. Please know I understand that and agree with that. I also am so grateful that we as a board are allowing this very important conversation to happen in public, with residents, because this is an ordinance that is on the books. There are many there's great need for affordable housing, and even this conversation here today has great benefit in this conversation to show how much we value this within the community. And for all projects going forward, this is something that is our strategic priority that we value. And yes, there may be exceptions that we are able to make for the greater good, for the greater benefit. But I believe these kind of conversations over this complex issue and need are important. So that's where I'm really grateful for this conversation that's happened tonight.
Okay, if no further questions or comments, then we'll take a vote on the motion. Roll call, please.
Trustee Dunnington?
So the motion is for the amendment, right?
For
No,
your
it's
motion.
Your motion.
Your motion.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
No.
Trustee LaBedz?
No.
Trustee Baldino?
No.
Trustee Tinaglia?
No.
Trustee Shirley?
No.
President Hayes?
No. Do we have an alternate motion? Trustee Dunnington.
So I do want this project to move forward. So I think that we could make another amendment that would be to 5B, and that would be to add that if the project 7 didn't move forward, the amendment would be to add the market rate component to will comply with the village inclusionary housing ordinance.
Is there a second to that motion?
So that's if building 7 does not happen, then buildings 1 through 6 would have to follow the inclusionary housing ordinance.
Is there a second?
Again, I'll second it for the important conversation.
Just in terms of the conversation, then there's a motion and a second, but I don't see any difference. I mean,
Mayor.
Go ahead, Trustee Tinaglia.
So I understand where the conversation is going on this, and I can tell you that if I were sitting in any of those 3 seats over there with this developer, I would be, thinking that's a dagger to the heart, because there's just no way that I can agree to that. So the best that I think we can hope for is that we stay extremely involved, because I, like Trustee Dunnington, want to see this happen as well. And I'm not afraid. I think we have some very good stewards here sitting at these desks over here, and all of us here have the same mind that we want this particular product any shape, any way that we can get it at this point, if it's in that one building or, sprinkled throughout. But it looks like, because this is what they're proposing, it's here, not everywhere. I really believe we'll find a way to make it happen. We will find a way to work with this developer or their partners or someone else if the property comes back to us in an improved version, by the way, a pad-ready site with utilities and everything, worth more than it was when we gave it to them. Right, Charles?
That's correct.
Is that correct? We'll find somebody, and oh, by the way, we have this housing fund, right, that all the developers contribute to with real money in it now, which could actually help to get something wonderful done here if everything else fell apart. So I'm not afraid. I think we all want the same thing, and the sake of discussion, I think, is good. But I'm ready to move on with this, and let's let these folks go get the next step rolling and go through the process, spending the tens and maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars on professionals to get this through our process here. And I'm glad that they're here tonight to, test the waters and get this thing in the right direction. So that's where my brain's at.
Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, let's take a roll call.
Excuse me. May I comment, please?
Okay, on this motion.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We were in discussing, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would ask you to vote for this, to put some kind of mechanism in here that if this does not happen, and there's a high chance this won't happen, because we have to apply every year for this. North Point seems to be missing in action right now. And so you got to find a new third-party developer. We're going to end up with that pad, and I am very concerned that nothing's going to happen out there. We're going to end up with giving USG 266 free of any affordable units and no mechanism for picking up affordable units unless we do it. I don't know, President Hayes, maybe you got some connections on how to build affordable housing. But there's a very real chance this will never happen on building number 7. So I would ask that you vote for this to put some kind of mechanism in place that if it does not, very realistically, not happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other audience comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
No.
Trustee Tinaglia?
No.
Trustee Baldino?
No.
Trustee LaBedz?
No.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
No.
President Hayes?
No. Who would like to make the next motion? Trustee
I'll give it a
Tinaglia,
try.
please.
Hart, help me out here. Put something on a screen
Just-
here that I can read, please.
Just need to approve the MOU as proposed.
I would move tonight to recommend to the village board to approve the resolution authorizing execution of the memorandum of understanding between the village and Urban Street LLC as presented tonight.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Tinaglia, seconded by Trustee Schwingbeck. Further questions or comments? Trustee Grasse.
Again, I'm grateful for this conversation tonight, and I would actually support this now with the hope and plan that going forward, we can, as it was mentioned, insert different benchmarks and milestones in good faith going forward when we come to that piece of it. That is very important to me. So I could support it knowing that that is important to me.
Mayor, if I can comment on that and really kind of, obviously we don't know what we'll have in this motion, to this whole discussion and maybe pivoting off Trustee Grasse's point, it is important to stress, and this has been toyed with a little bit tonight through the discussion, this MOU is not binding on the village at all. It says it by its own terms. And most specifically, this MOU is not to be considered as a grant in any way of any kind of relief that this project would need. It has not been evaluated, and the MOU says that as well. We don't know sitting here today whether any zoning variations are necessary or subdivision variations, or for that matter, we are presuming that this is the project that comes forward with the affordable housing as presented. And as Manager Recklouse read, our code does have a standard for that kind of relief, but no one's looked at that or even evaluated whether the standards have been met. Not at the staff level, certainly not at the several commissions that would review a project of this scope and size. So it is, approving this MOU, if it's approved in any form tonight, does not bind the village in any way to granting any of that relief. I should also note, it also doesn't stop the developer or the village from looking at and granting even more relief than you think would be necessary today. And I'm not saying that to be cute or just make it sound like a threat, but this is just a very preliminary table-setting exercise. Does it perhaps set some expectations? Granted, yes, it does. This does reflect what staff has negotiated as what staff believes is a starting point for those very formal processes that the board is quite familiar with. So to Trustee Grasse's point, all of the substantive items that were discussed tonight as it relates whether to the affordable housing or otherwise can be considered at the very many meetings and hearings that will take place if this developer chooses to go forward with the formal application.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Passman. Any further questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
No.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Well, the motion carries and the motion or the MOU is approved and with the understanding as Mr. Passman just indicated. And so thank you to all those who worked on the MOU. I know it's a very long process. And thank you to all those who provided input for our consideration here this evening and through emails over the last couple of weeks. And so we very much appreciate your participation. And so we move forward. Thank you. Good luck. All right, we have one other item on the legal agenda, and that's an ordinance adopting the village's current paid leave and benefits policy and opting out of the Illinois Paid Leave Act for all.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to go through this, quickly. So the state of Illinois passed the Paid Leave Act for all. I'm not sure why this is advancing as it is. And we're here to talk about whether or not the village should opt out and use a different standard. So what is the Paid Leave Act? Paid Leave Act. It sets paid leave and notice standards for Illinois employers, requires all employees, including part-time and temporary employees, to be given 1 week, at least 1 week of paid time off or the equivalent in the case of part-time employees. Employer cannot deny approval of the leave regardless of the reason for the leave or the impact on operations. Leave is available after 90 days of employment, and this would be effective January 1 of 2024. Why would we, who does it affect? It affects all other employers other than, I don't know what's going on here, other than park districts or in school districts. However, home rule municipalities, which we are, have the ability to opt out and set our own rules. The state could have set their own, could have said that home municipalities could have preempted home rule and made us part of it. They allowed home rule municipalities to opt out and set our own rules. Why would we consider opting out? Charles, if you want to put that out of presentation mode, it might be the easiest, and we can just advance the slides. There you go. Go up one more. One back, one more. Why are we considering opting this out? I can talk less fast now. All full-time village employees currently receive sick, vacation, and personal leave that accrues beyond the minimums in the Act. In light of the new law, in order to stay competitive, we are intending to implement proportional paid leave to all of our permanent part-time employees so that we can continue to compete with all employers on that basis. But really the main point of this is we have a unique mission in our unique organization. Village employees, unlike most employers, have to respond to unpredictable emergencies on a 24/7 basis, which requires us to maintain minimum manning standards for readiness. Staff just believes that the lack of ability to deny leave for any reason is not compatible with our organization's mission. It's not that we go out of our way to deny leave. I honestly can't think of a time when we've denied any kind of medical or personal leave of any kind, other than if someone says, I have a last minute vacation, can I go? Sometimes we've done that if we aren't at meeting operational standards or at minimum manning. For anything serious, we tend to take care of our employees, and our employees take care of one another. Again, the state could have preempted home rule communities, but they did not, which is allow home rule communities to opt out and set our own rules on a permanent basis. This is something many other area communities are doing or already have done. Locally, Palatine, Schaumburg, and Elk Grove are already opted out, and Rolling Meadows, Buffalo Grove, and Wheeling have the item on their agendas early this week or within the next couple of weeks. One thing that we have to point out is that if the village is going to opt out, we must do so prior to January 1st of 2024, the way that the law is written. You can go to the next slide. So what does the proposed ordinance do? I'm going to let Hart talk our way through this since he wrote it.
Thank you, Manager Reckloss. The ordinance, and you have it in your packet, of course. The ordinance very simply says that our personnel policies and our personnel manual, our collective bargaining agreements, our village code. That will set the paid leave requirements for the village. The language enables the village to continue to update those as deemed in the best interest of the village, which is different also from the Act. The Act provides that even communities that have their own paid leave in place as of December 31st, if they do not opt out, if they can opt out, if they're home rule, then future revisions will have to catch up to the Act. So the scope of this proposed ordinance would be to define what our paid leave policies are with reference to, again, what's in our code, our personal policy, and our collective bargaining agreements, and also that will be and remain how we will regulate paid leave for village employees and not through whatever provisions are in the Act. It's important to note that the proposed ordinance only exercises home rule authority as to the village itself as an employer. This is not seeking to exercise authority for other village businesses. I should say that was something that some home rule communities have toyed with throughout the metropolitan area. I'm not aware of any community that's done that yet, but there was some thought to that. That was ultimately not the direction that staff wanted to pursue it. This would only take the village as an employer outside the requirements of the Act and use our own current rules and however amended going forward.
And one other thing to add on that, even if we did enact our own rules right now, they wouldn't apply to our collectively bargained employees. And since about 200 of our 438 employees are collectively bargained, it really would, and those are the ones that are, probably the most sensitive in terms of public safety along with public works. We feel that opting out is the best option for us to preserve our adaptability going forward. But with the caveat that we are intending to, as of January 1st, effective day of the Act, update our benefits for part-time employees. That was the one area where we were deficient relative to the Act for our employee benefits. But with that, if you want to go to the last slide, staff does recommend approval of the ordinance that's included that would adopt the village's current paid leave and benefits policy and opt out of the Paid Leave for All Act. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you both. I do support this recommendation. I think both actions make sense, and especially in light of, as was explained, our mission and our need to provide unpredictable emergency work on a 24/7 basis. And so I would not, want to delve into what a private business should be doing. I think that's within their own purview. But I think it really makes sense for a municipality that has the mission we have to opt out of this so that we do have the ability to deny leave requests if the mission dictates so. Any further comments? Trustee Grasse.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'd like to first comment. I am in support and so grateful for the village doing generous paid leave and benefits for your employees. That ensures we have top-notch employees, it takes care of our employees, and it makes satisfied customers in the village. There's no doubt about that. So I'm in great support of what you want to increase with the benefits and the policy. I want to speak just a little bit about what I know in healthcare. I myself am allowed 2 PTO days from December 15th to January 15th, only if no other chaplain is off during those days, because we also we have to have the appropriate staff to take care of our patients and families. And I guess my quick question is, I think hospitals have the same situation, but they are going to have to abide by this new Paid Leave Act, correct? So they also have some of the same challenges that our village does.
Trustee Grasse, that's correct. The only exemptions in the statute that the legislature saw fit to create were for school districts and park districts.
Thank you. And I guess what I'd like to speak to, like I said, I am so grateful that our village values its employees so much and wants to increase these benefits and do this. But I also want to speak a little bit about what I've known through my lifetime of having employees. And I spoke a little bit about this with Manager Reckless. It's been my experience, and please tell me if this is wrong, that unfortunately, in every place, there might be a few outliers who take advantage of every possible scenario they can. I've never worked in a place that didn't have that. Everybody knows who those people are. The managers know who those people are. I am not in favor of opting out of fear of the few who might take advantage. The employees I have met here in the village, who I work with in healthcare, care about the bigger value and the bigger mission of what they do. Their fellow coworkers know who doesn't do what they're supposed to do. And so to me, that becomes more of a manager issue for those outliers who don't do what they're supposed to do, because everybody knows who they are. So I also feel it's important as our village to model for the businesses who have to honor this. So I am in great support and appreciation for the Paid Leave Act and the benefits, but I'm not in support of opting out, because I believe that adjusting our benefits and paid leave can do that, and I'm grateful we do.
Other questions or comments from the board? All right, Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you so much. I too, I'm in agreement with Trustee Grasse. I think that we should update our policies so that our part-time workers have paid time leave off. But I do not think that we should opt out of the Paid Leave Act. I believe that police and fire are excluded because of their collective bargaining agreement. So this is really applying to our public works and our office staff. And so I think that we should follow the Paid Leave Act so that they have those benefits that are afforded by the new act.
Anybody else on the board? Seeing none, we have one blue card, Mr. Moons.
Thank you, President Hayes. You know, at the committee of the whole budget meetings last week, you know, this board just gushed over and over about how great our public works employees are, and they are. They work very hard, they're very diligent, especially when you got a water spout coming out of your driveway in the middle of January. I mean, they're there. And so I think we have an opportunity to give a benefit to our public works non-union employees to have something that they deserve. And that's the right for paid leave when they want to do it, not to be denied. And so the village policy is not as good as the Illinois policy. It just isn't. And I think to think that, you know, that they're going to just run away, you know, when they're needed. Most people don't do that as an employee. First of all, any employee is not that important. But if I'm very vital to it, I'm not going to walk away. And so I think you got to give credit to these people that are working non-union. They are probably have some unfair labor practices at Public Works, and there's probably some wages that need to be picked up that they should be in a union. And so this Illinois is better than what we can come up with, and I would ask that you not opt out of this for our public works, mostly public works, non-union people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience on this item? Seeing none, I come back to the board for further discussion or a motion. We do have a staff recommendation for approval of the ordinance and to opt out of the Paid Leave Act, Paid Leave for All Act. Is there a motion or further discussion?
Mayor, I'd be happy to put a motion on the floor.
Okay, Trustee Schwingbeck.
I would move approval of the ordinance adopting the village's current paid leave and benefits policy and opting out of the Paid Leave for All Act.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Schwingbeck, seconded by Trustee Tinaglia. Further questions or comments from the board or from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
No.
Trustee Dunnington?
No.
Trustee Baldino?
No.
President Hayes?
Yes. Motion carries. And so thank you, Hart, and everyone for your involvement in drafting this and analyzing the issue.
Of course, happy to.
Appreciate it. Any report of the village manager other than the request for closed session?
Nothing further.
All right. Anything from the board under petitions and communications? Let me just say one thing, that this is Thanksgiving week. And so we do have a very special day on Thursday. And so I hope you all take the time to give thanks for all the blessings in your lives. We're very fortunate to live in a great community and have a lot to be thankful for here. And also on Friday, we're going to be lighting the holiday tree, both in North School Park and in Harmony Park. And so please join us at the annual tree lighting ceremony put on by our very own Special Events Commission. They have promised me they're going to have hot chocolate this year. And so very much looking forward to it. About 4:30 at North School Park, and we'll flip the switch right about 5:05. And so looking forward to see everybody there. We're praying for good weather. So thank you all. Any other petitions and communications? If not, then it is before 10 o'clock, so let's proceed as planned and go to Mr. Ecklouse for a request for closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff would respectfully request that the board enter a closed session per 5 ILCS 120/2C21, discussion of minutes lawfully closed, whether for the purpose of the approval of minutes or the semi-annual review of the minutes, and 5 ILCS 120/2C1, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or employees of the public body or legal counsel.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Tinaglia, second by trustee LaBedz to go into closed session. Roll call.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. We are adjourned to closed session. We'll not be reporting back out. Thank you all for joining us this evening.